Is Tayam CEDH viable, or will it be left in the dust? Find out on today's episode. Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Dragon Shield has some great new designs for the holidays. Also, check out their Truth and Justice matte dual sleeves now on sale. They have recently relaunched their store, so check out the link in the description below and use promo code PlayingWithPower5 for 5% off of your order. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have our Mox Pearl patron Nabil piloting Tayam Luminous Enigma. This deck seeks to abuse counters on permanents with its commander, generate a ton of value, and wins by looping Moonglove Extract. Nabil's opening hand contains a Vampiric Tutor, Deafening Silence, Worldly Tutor, Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, Devoted Druid, Marsh Flats, and a Windswept Heath. Next, we have Ashani piloting Korvold Fey Cursed King. This deck seeks to leverage its commander for massive card advantage while storming off with Ad Nauseam or Food Chain. Ashani's opening hand contains a Command Tower, Tinderwall, Finale of Devastation, Praetor's Grasp, Verdant Catacombs, and his London Mulligans are Assassin's Trophy and Forbidden Orchard. After that, we have Mike piloting Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. This deck seeks to ramp on mana using its commander, then go infinite with Tidespout Tyrant or Hullbreaker Horror. Mike's opening hand contains a Gilded Drake, Mana Vault, Tropical Island, Ancient Tomb, Tezzeret the Seeker, and his London Mulligans are Cyclonic Rift and Thassa's Oracle. Finally, we have Zach piloting the partner pair of Ardenn, Intrepid Archaeologist, and Tana the Bloodsower. This is a stacks deck that seeks to slow down the table and leverage Ardenn for easier equips and combats. Zach's opening hand contains the Llanowar Elves, Ethersworn Canonist, Finale of Devastation, Eldritch Evolution, Swords to Plowshares, Stomping Ground, and a Savannah. Without further ado, let's kick off this embarrassing emergency embodiment of embezzlement. Ashani had the only Jund deck at the table, so they felt sorry for him and let him go first. Ashani draws a card for turn and plays a Command Tower. He casts a Tinderwall and passes the turn. Mike draws and plays a Tropical Island. He casts a Mox Diamond, discarding an Ancient Tomb. He casts his commander, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. Mike passes. Zach draws and plays a Savannah. He casts a Llanowar Elves and ends his turn. Nabil draws and plays a Windswept Heath. They crack it, pay a life, and fetch up a Savannah onto the battlefield. They cast Deafening Silence, much to the laughter of the table. Nabil passes. Ashani draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. Ashani ships the turn. Mike draws and plays an Ottawara, Soaring City as his land for turn. He casts a Mana Vault. Mike activates Kinnan, looking at the top 5, putting a Colossal Sky Turtle onto the battlefield. The table loves what's happening right now, and Mike gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Battlefield Forge. He casts Ethersworn Canonist. Ashani regrets his deck choice as Zach passes to Nabil. Nabil draws and plays a Marsh Flats. They crack it, pay a life, and fetch up a Bayou onto the battlefield. Nabil passes. Ashani draws, plays a Bloodstained Mire, and passes the turn. During his draw step, Mike takes a damage through his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he exiles Elvish Spirit Guide from his hand, adding a green. He casts Tezzeret the Seeker. Surprisingly, it resolves. He activates Tezzeret's first ability, untapping Mox Diamond and Mana Vault. The table breathes a sigh of relief, and Mike passes to Zach. At the end of Mike's turn, Zach taps his Battlefield Forge to cast Swords to Plowshares, targeting Kinnan. Kinnan is exiled, Mike gains 2 life, and the turn moves to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Stomping Ground, into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Finale of Devastation, where X equals 2. Everyone, ready for Dockside, let it resolve. Then Zach fetches up a Collector Roof onto the battlefield, and the rest of the table sinks their head. Zach passes. At the end of Zach's turn, Nabil casts Worldly Tutor, fetching up a Wall of Roots onto the top of their library. Nabil draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. They tap it to cast Wall of Roots. In response, Ashani cracks his Bloodstained Mire, pays a life, and fetches up a Blood Crypt onto the battlefield tapped. He cracks his Verdant Catacombs, pays a life, and fetches up an Overgrown Tomb onto the battlefield tapped. Then Wall of Roots resolves. Nabil passes. Ashani draws and casts Necropotence. The table braces for impact as it resolves. Ashani activates Necropotence 7 times, paying 7 life, exiling 7 cards. He moves to his end step and puts the Necro cards into his hand. He passes, discarding to hand size, exiling the discarded cards. Mike draws and plays a City of Brass. He activates Tezzeret's second ability, where X equals 2, fetching up a Spellskite onto the battlefield. He moves to combat and attacks Ashani with Colossal Sky Turtle. Ashani takes it, and Mike passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Nabil puts a counter onto Wall of Roots, adding a green. Zack draws and moves to combat. He attacks Tezzeret with Ethersworn and Collector Roof. Mike blocks Canonist, and Tezzeret takes 2. In his second main phase, Zack casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Ethersworn Canonist as an additional cost. He fetches up a Yasharn, Implacable Earth, onto the battlefield. Ashani attempts to concede, but Zack lets him know that he is stuck with him whether he likes it or not. Yasharn enters, and Zack fetches up a forest and fetches up a plains into his hand. He plays a forest for turn and passes to Nabil. At the end of Zack's turn, Nabil adds a counter to Wall of Roots, adding a green. Nabil draws and plays a Polluted Delta. They tap Ancient Tomb and add a counter to Wall of Roots, adding a green to help cast their commander, Tayam, Luminous Enigma. Nabil ships the turn to Ashani. Ashani skips his draw step due to Necropotence. In his main phase, he plays a Taiga for turn. He casts Birgi, God of Storytelling. Without anything else to do, Ashani passes to Mike. Mike draws and activates Tezzeret's first ability with no targets. Locked out of anything else, Mike passes. Zack draws and taps his Battlefield Forge to help cast Grand Abolisher. He casts a Wild Growth. He plays a Plains for turn. He casts his commander, Tana the Bloodsower. With nothing else, Zack passes. Nabil draws and activates Wall of Roots, adding a counter and adding a green. They tap Ancient Tomb, then activate Tayam, milling 3 and returning Gaia's Cradle from their graveyard to the battlefield. Nabil ships the turn. Ashani skips his draw step due to Necropotence. In his main phase, he casts Praetor's Grasp, targeting Zack. Birgi triggers, and Ashani adds a red. He fetches up a card from Zack's library into exile face down. Ashani passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Nabil activates Wall of Roots, adding a counter and adding a green. Still in the instep, Mike casts Mystical Tutor, fetching up a Snap onto the top of his library. The turn moves to Mike. Mike draws and casts Snap, targeting Collector Oof. Oof bounces, and Mike untaps 2 lands. He recasts his commander, Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. He activates Tezzeret's first ability, untapping Mana Vault and Mox Diamond. Then he activates Kinnan. He looks at the top 5, putting Hullbreaker Horror onto the battlefield. He casts a Gilded Drake. Hullbreaker Horror triggers, and Mike mounts his Birgi back to Ashani's hand. Gilded Drake enters and targets Tayam. In response, Nabil adds a counter to Wall of Roots, adding a green. Then Nabil casts Vampiric Tutor. Nabil fetches up a card onto the top of their library and loses 2 life. Then Nabil activates Tayam, removing 3 counters from Wall of Roots. Nabil mills 3, then returns Hexdrinker to the battlefield. Then Mike exchanges control of Gilded Drake and Tayam. All through, Mike passes to Zack. Zack draws and casts Helm of the Host. He casts his commander, Ardenn, Intrepid Archaeologist. He moves to combat and Ardenn triggers. Zack equips Helm of the Host to Yasharn. Then Helm of the Host creates a copy of Yasharn. Yasharn enters, and Zack fetches up a Plains and fetches up a Forest into his hand. He attacks Ashani with Tana, Grand Abolisher, and the Yasharn token. Ashani takes it, Tana triggers, and Zack creates 2 Saprolines. In his second main phase, he plays a Forest. Zack gives the turn to Nabil. Nabil draws and puts a counter onto Wall of Roots, adding a green. Nabil casts Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler. They activate Tyvar's second ability, milling 3 and not returning anything. Nabil taps Ancient Tomb and Gaia's Cradle to activate Hexdrinker, leveling it up 5 times. Nabil ships the turn. Ashani skips his draw step due to Necropotence. In his main phase, he casts Finale of Devastation where X equals 2. He fetches up a Dockside Extortionist onto the battlefield. Dockside enters, and Ashani creates 7 treasures. Ashani passes to Mike. During his draw step, Mike takes the damage through his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he activates Tezzeret's second ability where X equals 3, fetching up a Basalt Monolith onto the battlefield. Mike taps Basalt, adding 4 colorless mana through Kinnan. He activates Basalt to untap it. In response, Zack casts Nature's Claim, targeting Basalt. In response, Mike casts Mental Misstep, targeting Nature's Claim. Hullbreaker Horror triggers, bouncing Gilded Drake back to Mike's hand. Then Mental Misstep counters Nature's Claim, and Basalt Monolith untaps. Mike presents a loop of tapping Basalt for 4, then untapping it for 3, netting infinite colorless mana. He casts Gilded Drake. Drake enters and exchanges control of Nabil's Hexdrinker. Mike then uses his infinite colorless mana to level up Hexdrinker infinite times, giving it infinite level up counters. Then Mike activates Tayam, which he still has control of, milling 3 and returning permanents from his graveyard to the battlefield. He does this over and over until he finds Thrasios, Triton Hero, putting it onto the battlefield. He activates Thrasios, putting all lands onto the battlefield tapped and all cards into his hand. He casts Thassa's Oracle. Oracle enters, and Mike wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, that game was brilliant. Congrats to Mike on his win. He was able to leverage his own opponent's spells against them and then use them to win the game on his own. His move with stealing Hexdrinker and Tayam was very cool and super well done. The most valuable card in tonight's game, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Yasharn, Implacable Earth. Sure, Tayam, Gilded Drake, and others actually won the game, but it was Yasharn that completely changed how the game was played. It completely shut down Ashani and nerfed both Mike and Nabil. When Zack made a second Yasharn, Ashani knew he was out of the game entirely. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we do get out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.